Hello, students, and how are you today? How was your weekend? I hope you had a good one. Ramadan Mubarak. Well, today we're studying math and we're going to be looking at a review on lesson 11. We finished all our topics and we'll just have a review on lesson 11. Well, we're going to look at measurements and we'll look at length, mass, and volume. Our objective is to be able to identify and convert units for measuring length, the same thing for mass, and the same thing for capacity or volume. Now we have units of measurements. Remember when we studied measurements, we have three major units of measurements. We have length, mass, and volume. Remember I said that length measures the size of a thing, how long, how tall. Mass measures how heavy or how light. Then volume measures how much or how little. That's the quantity of things. And we have units for each of them. For example, to measure length, we have 4 units. To measure mass, we have 2 units. And for volume, we equally have 2 units. Only the length has 4 different kinds of units. And what are the units of length? Millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. Now please take note that millimeters is the tiniest unit. It measures very little objects. Centimeters is the next one. It measures objects that are a little bit bigger, maybe like your pencil, your ruler, your school bag. But for meters, it measures larger objects like the sofa, like the bed, like the tree outside the house, a bus, your dad's car, mommy's car. That's what meters measures. And for kilometers, it measures distance and roads. So don't forget, the unit of length is the only one that has 4 different units. And if you remember from the last lesson, I usually say MCMK. Just for you to remember that whenever you talk about length, you're talking about the acronym MCMK. Millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. And then mass. How many units do we have? 2. And can you remember the units of mass we spoke about? How do we measure if it is heavy? And how do we measure if it is light? The units of mass are grams and kilograms. Of course, grams is for measuring light objects and kilograms for measuring objects that are bigger or heavier. And what about volume? Remember when I spoke about volume and said volume measures quantity. It usually measures things that are in liquid or semi-liquid form. Liquid means watery form, something in form of water, like your ice cream, water, yogurts, something that is watery in watery form, or in a semi-solid form or semi-watery form. It's not, like thick. It's not like a block. It's still watery, like the thick yogurts you have. If you check the can of the yogurts, the dandies, the baladnas, you'll find out that on the yogurts you have milliliters. They will be measured in milliliters. Okay, so that's how volume is measured, in milliliters for small quantities and liters for large quantities. Now let's see length. Length, remember we have 4 units. I made a block here for you to be able to see how little and large each of the units are. You can see that millimeters has the smallest block, and it has 10 on it because 10 millimeters make 1 centimeter. The next one is centimeters, and it has 100 on it because 100 centimeters make 1 meter. And the next bigger one is meters, and it has 1000 on it because 1000 meters make 1 kilometer. Now, as you see each of the blocks, as you can view each of the blocks are representing how big the units are. Which of the blocks is the biggest? The kilometer block. The kilometer block is the biggest because it is the biggest unit. So, take note of the rules of conversion. When converting, we convert from big to small, we multiply, and small to big, we divide. Now you know the small units and you know the big units. Millimeters is smaller than centimeters. Centimeters is smaller than meters, and meters is smaller than kilometers. And it goes down the same way if you go from kilometer to meter to centimeter and to millimeters as well. Now, please take note that it is very important when you're converting big to small, multiply, small to big, divide. Also, look at the direction of the arrows that I have here. On the arrows, it says going from the big block upward, you multiply. That means from the big units to any of the small units, multiply. And then coming downward from the small units to the big units, you have to divide. You see that? From big to small, multiply. That means you're going upward towards the smaller units. And when you're converting from small units to big units, you divide. It means you're moving from the small blocks to the big blocks. Now let's see how to read measurements in length. Look at the first line, the first green line I have, and the second one. The first green line is, okay, first I'll tell you the rules for measurements. When you're measuring in length, you must ensure that the tip or the beginning of the object you're measuring is touching the first line of your tape rule or your tape measure or your scale or your ruler. What do I mean by that? Can you see the red line that is on the centimeter, the first line after the centimeter? Good. Now, it means that all the objects you're measuring must begin or must touch that line for you to get an accurate measurement. The first green line is wrongly placed because it is slanting. It is not aligning. It is not straight. The ruler is straight and the object equally has to be straight. So it is wrongly placed and it cannot get an accurate measurement. The second line is not touching the beginning where 0 is. It's not touching it. So it's equally not going to give you a proper measurement. So it is wrongly placed and it can be rightly measured. Now let's see the other line, the blue one. Yes, this is perfect. The blue line starts from the beginning and then it's aligned. It is with the ruler. It is on a straight line with the ruler. Now see where the blue line stops. The blue line stops on number 4. This ruler measures in centimeters, so it means the blue line measures 4 centimeters. What about the red line underneath? The red line measures from the beginning, touches the beginning of the measuring points. Perfect one. And it ends somewhere in between 6 and 7. Now, each of the lines between those two numbers will be read as 1 or 0.1. So, for example, the line after 6, immediately after 6 will be 6.1. 6.1. The next will be 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, 6.7, 6.8. Now it means this red line is measuring 6.8 centimeters or 6 centimeters and 8 millimeters because the lines in between the numbers are measured in millimeters. It's not up to a meter. It's not up to a centimeter. So it's measured in millimeters. Let's take a look at the pencil. The pencil stops somewhere around almost close to 6, but not up to 6. So it has crossed 5 centimeters. We can say it's 5 centimeters and count the lines in between, we have 8 of them. 5 centimeters and 8 millimeters, or 5.8 centimeters. Now let's go to mass. Mass has just 2 units. Remember I said it measures weight. It has just grams and kilograms. Grams for lighter objects, kilograms for heavier objects. Don't forget the conversion rule. Big to small multiply and small to big divide. Now look at the block, our block for grams and kilograms. Grams has a smaller block. Kilograms has a bigger block. This is to let you know which of the units is big and which of the units is the small one. Grams is the smaller unit, kilograms is the big unit. Don't forget, when you're moving from the big block to the small block, multiply. And from the small block to the big block, you have to divide. So now when you're multiplying or dividing, you make use of 1,000. Why? Because 1,000 grams make 1 kilogram. So whatever you're multiplying or dividing will be by 1,000. This one is quite easier than length. For length, you have 10 millimeters make 1 centimeter, 100 centimeters make 1 meter, and 1,000 meters make 1 kilometer. But this is just straightforward. 2 units for measuring weight, that's mass, and 1,000 is the only unit you have to multiply or divide by. Now let's see how to read measurements in mass. To read measurements, the lines, the numbers we have on this scale, first of all, remember I said to you the scale, check what the scale is measuring in. This scale is measuring in kilograms, and it has big and small units. The small units are the ones at the lines in between the single numbers. The single numbers are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now look, 1 is measured in kilogram, 2 is measured in kilogram, but for the lines in between, they are measured in grams, and each of the line represents 100 grams. Remember also that I said 1,000 grams make 1 kilogram. Now, what is the mass of the object on this scale? Like I said, check where the arrow is pointed to and then read the numbers. It has gone past 3, but it's not on 4 yet. It's somewhere in between. And I said to you the lines in between represent 100 grams each. So it means we have 3 kilograms and 1, 2, 3, 4. It's on 4. That means we have 3 kilograms and 400 grams, or 3.4 kilograms. Or we can say 3,400 grams, because if you convert 3 kilograms to grams, it is 3,000 grams. Let's see finally volume. For volume, the units of volume are also 2, and volume measures only quantity. For volume, we measure millimeters and milliliters and liters. Liters is for something plenty in quantity, and milliliters is for small quantity. Now remember the blocks also, small to big, multiply. Big to small, multiply, and small to big, you divide. What's our block? Milliliters has the smaller block and liters has the bigger block. For this also, you only multiply or divide by 1,000, because 1,000 milliliters make 1 liter. Now let's take a look at this. How to read measurements in volume. Look at the lines we have on tube A and tube B. Let's try to read the measurements. For tube A, the whole numbers are in milliliters. So it means we have 100 milliliters, 200 milliliters, 300 milliliters, 400 milliliters, up to 1,000. And of course, remember, 1,000 milliliters make 1 liter. So it means if this tube is filled up to capacity, then we can say it is up to 1 liter. 1000 milliliters make 1 liter, remember? All right, now also the lines in between two numbers represents 10 milliliters each. The line between 100 and 200, each of those lines represents 10 milliliters each. So what does our measurement on tube A read? We have the line is already gone past 400, and it's touching on the second line after 400. Remember, each line is 10 milliliters. So it means after 400, we have 410 and 420 milliliters. Let's look at tube B. The whole numbers here are in liters, and the line between each of the two numbers, between 10 and 20, 20 and 30, 30 and 40, and so on, the lines, the little lines you see in between them, represent 1 liter each. So how do we measure this now? We have the line going above 50, but it's not up to 60. I think it's touching on about the first, second, third line. It's touching on the third line. So here we can say we have 50, then 1, 2, 3, because each of those lines is representing 1 liter. So we can say we have 53 liters. Students, thank you so much for your time once again. Ramadan Mubarak. We're going to have another review on another topic tomorrow, and until then, take care of yourselves and have a good time. Bye.